best values in bourbon come from a single barrel. Now what I just did was riff off the Blanton's marketing spiel that the best bourbon in the world comes from a single barrel. Well, I don't necessarily agree that the best bourbon in the world comes from a single barrel. I am going to make the case that the best value in bourbon and American whiskey comes from a single barrel, specifically single barrel store picks. If you hear kids playing in the background, that's because they are. I have kids in my house, my kids, so sorry about that. Otherwise, if you're here and you're new to the Droopy Whiskey channel, I'm stoked to have you guys here. Thank you. If you want more content like this, just go over to my channel and subscribe. You can also check out the Entry Proof Podcast at entryproofpodcast.com. That is where I team up with Brian Bikey from Abandoned Bourbon, and we interview, taste, and talk about bourbon specifically, some rye, mostly American whiskey. And if you want to support the channel/podcast, you can go to patreon.com/entryproofpodcast. Now let's talk about the topic for today, and that is, what is the deal with single barrel store picks? I have before you, behold, 6 different single barrel store picks. First, let's talk about what a single barrel store pick is. First, it's a single barrel, unless it's not. For instance, I think the 1792 program generally is like a blend of 2 barrels, which is a little bit weird. So a single barrel that's not a single barrel. But most of the time, a single barrel store pick is a single barrel product. Now the brand that is being picked, for instance, this George Remus, like this Remus is normally a small batch product. So a single barrel is a little bit different, obviously. Whereas the small batch product is going to be made up of many barrels, this is one. What's also unique about some single barrel products like Four Roses and like the Remus is that the single barrel picks are actually a different proof point than the standard offerings. The standard Four Roses single barrel that's not a store pick comes in at 100 proof, 50% alcohol by volume, whereas the single barrel select, or their private select, that's what they call it, ranges. It's barrel proof, so who knows until that thing gets bottled. The Remus works the same way. Now, more standard kind of single barrel offerings like the Buffalo Trace, it's a single barrel where it's normally a small batch product, or I guess fairly large batch in Buffalo Trace's case, but it's going to be the 90 proof. So it's just a single barrel version with a very similar taste profile to standard Buffalo Trace, coming in at the same proof point. So single barrel store pick, it's a single barrel, and then it's a store pick. I mean, it's not terribly complicated, this single barrel store pick thing. The dealio is that a store reaches out to their distributor, maybe directly to a distillery, and they say, listen, we'd like to buy a barrel of a particular brand. What shows up a lot are Elijah Craig, Knob Creek. Those are probably the 2 most common that show up. Of course, some of the most highly sought after single barrel picks are, the Buffalo Trace, the Eagle Rare. Stag Jr. now is going to be able to be bought, barrels of it, to be sold as single barrels. The pull and the secondary value on those is going to be redonkulous. But a store can say, hey, I would like to buy a barrel of that. And if you're trying to get a barrel of Buffalo Trace or Eagle Rare, you're going to have to get in line, because Buffalo Trace Distillery has a waiting list for that kind of thing, and certain barrel allocations by state. But for the Knob Creek, something like that, pretty much if you've thought about selling liquor before, then you can probably go get a barrel of Knob Creek. Seems like everybody has one. And when you reach out to distillery/distributor and you want to pick a barrel, it can go kind of one of 2 ways. One way is you actually get to go down to Kentucky or Illinois or Indiana or wherever the distillery is and taste through some barrels and pick a barrel and take it home with you. Not literally take it home with you, because of the way that alcohol is sold, it has to be sold to the distributor, to the store, but that barrel is earmarked for you. No one else is going to get it. That's definitely the best way you can pick a barrel. But most of the time, particularly for something like a Knob Creek, particularly in the days of COVID, you get sent barrel samples. So to your store, they'll send you anywhere from 3 to 5. Most of the time it's 3 samples that you can taste from and either pick your favorite, and then they earmark that barrel for you, and it will come, or you don't, because it wasn't very good. For instance, the Facebook bourbon group that I'm in Wisconsin recently turned down a barrel of Remus, actually, because they said they weren't good, which thankfully this bottle of Remus is quite good. But they said, nah, we tasted some and we didn't like what we were offered, so we rejected it. That happens. It's the way it goes with picking barrels sometimes. Most of the time, if you're down in Kentucky, say at Wild Turkey, say you went to Knob Creek actually, and you're tasting barrels, they're probably going to try and find one to send you home with. Like they want you to buy a barrel. But if you're just getting samples shipped to you, it may not go as smoothly. So the bottles in front of you, they've gone well. I mean, where the stores reached out and said, hey, we would like to buy a bottle, or we got in line to buy a barrel, of Eagle Rare, and then the samples they liked, and then they picked. And eventually the 200 some bottles of whiskey showed up by the caseload, and then were offered for sale. So a single barrel store pick is a single barrel that the store picked. That is the short of that. Now, why is it the best value in bourbon / American whiskey? Well, first, I mean, let's think about it. A store was able to taste through multiple samples, multiple barrels, to pick the best one. And if the people who are tasting know what they're doing, the odds are pretty good they're going to pick a pretty good one, something that tastes relatively nice. I mean, I wouldn't want to put my name on something or the entry-proof name on something that I didn't think was really, really good. So it's my hope that the stores picking are doing that. So the upside of a single barrel store pick is most of the time it's been a vetted product. Tasted through, this one was the best, let's offer that one for sale, let's buy that barrel and offer it up to our customers. That's pretty cool. And in some cases, the barrels that are picked are really, really good barrels. Phenomenal barrels. This is the 3rd bottle of a particular barrel from Timers in Racine, who I go to a lot, of Knob Creek. And this is only a 9-year-old one, but man, it was really, really solid, and I liked it quite a bit better than the standard Knob Creek single barrels that you can get just off this shelf anywhere. So I think Jason and the squad over there do a pretty good job tasting through stuff and picking. The best 1792 full proof I had was a single barrel store pick. I mean, they're small. Their batches of full proof are okay, but their store picks can be quite good. I mean, yeah. And then even, this Remus, I'm not a big fan of the Remus small batch at all, but this pick, I was able to taste it before I bought 2 bottles, and I was like, whoa, that is just light years better than the standard small batch. Like, tastes like it's got a little bit more age, all kinds of flavor. Like, this one is so flavorful, kind of creamy while being hot at the same time, spicy and sweet. I tasted that one up against the Belmead Reserve, actually, from this year, and I would take that Remus over the Belmead Reserve. So with a single barrel store pick, you can certainly bet on getting a really solid product. And for me, if I'm going to buy an Eagle Rare store pick over the standard Eagle Rare, my hope is that it's a little bit better than the standard offering. I would hope so, being that it went through that curation stage. And with that quality and that curation, that vetting process, then like when we think about what a single barrel store pick is, it's pretty special. Like, there's only going to be somewhere between like 125 and 225 bottles of that particular whiskey. When it's gone, it's gone. What I'm tasting today, I'm not going to be able to taste again. So it brings the rarity factor in without having to pay for the limited edition prices. It's pretty solid value. Now, I do think that the single barrels are undervalued. So I mean, I don't want to send a death signal or whatever, but I am aware that it takes some logistics to get stores down to buy barrels of particular products. Then cases have to be shipped and earmarked for a certain liquor store, And then oftentimes the actual physical barrel is sent or picked up or whatever. So it just takes some logistics to get, Joe Bob's Liquor from Manitowoc, Wisconsin, down to Knob Creek to pick through 5 barrels. Then they pick their best one. Then that has to be set aside and bottled specially for them. And I mean, that's just a thing, And the stores that do a really good job picking good barrels, like that takes some skill and takes a lot of effort. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to just sell these particular products at the standard MSRP. So like often you will see these Knob Creek single barrel picks for $40 to $50, which is what a standard Knob Creek single barrel costs, one that hasn't been picked. That's pretty awesome, and I don't think it's going to last. I mean, I haven't heard that places are going to start charging premiums for their single barrels or more. The Four Roses and the Old Forester picks, those are actually quite expensive, but that's because they're kind of unique products. You can't get barrel strength Old Forester anywhere else other than these single barrel picks. Same with the Four Roses. You can't get single barrel strength with that either. So they do cost a little bit more, but it's not crazy money. I fear that because the single barrel pick programs for a lot of stores have gotten a lot of traction, and particular products when they're single barrel picks like this Eagle Rare will sell out in a matter of hours. Like it's not going to be around very long. So I think we're going to start seeing the prices get hiked on these. Again, not that I want that. It's just economics. Like the demand for these is so high generally that they demand a premium. And a lot of these products do end up getting traded on the secondary market for significantly more than their MSRP. So if you're new to bourbon, just like pro tip, if I'm ever seeing a Knob Creek single barrel store pick more than 11 years old, I'm going to buy it because they don't show up very often. There was a stretch about 2 years ago where a lot of like 14 and 15-year-old Knob Creek store picks hit the market. It was awesome. A lot of them were really good. So always pick up that Knob Creek store pick and look at the dates. And if you can get one that's over 11 years old, good for you. That's awesome. But also don't just shy away from it because it's not 11 or 12 years. I mentioned this particular barrel is only 9 years, but I think it's phenomenal. If you ever have the opportunity of getting Four Roses private select picks of any age or any recipe, you should probably do that. This one is not my favorite, but it's still super good. And some of these things are unbelievable. I've had some absolutely incredible Four Roses picks. So in terms of bang for your buck, whereas these can cost you 70 to 80 bucks, it's probably worth it. These Old Forester barrel strength picks hit the market with a lot of hype. Like everybody wanted barrel strength Old Forester, and I was really excited to try it too. And I enjoy it, but it's so hot. It's hot as balls. I've had a couple. I've tasted 3 now, and I've enjoyed 2 of them, but they're crazy. Like they pack a wallop. So I don't mind adding a little water to try and tame this beast. I would think twice before you drop the 80 to 90 bucks that you're probably going to have to pay for an Old Forester barrel strength. I would taste it first, make sure it's something you think you're going to like. Of all the Buffalo Trace products that get offered as single barrels, the standard Buffalo Trace is definitely the most attainable. It's not unusual for grocery stores or Total Wine to be able to pull Buffalo Trace single barrels. This one actually came from a grocery store, and it's okay. Like, I think it's a little bit better than standard Buffalo Trace, but it's not unbelievable, and I think it's probably because it came from a grocery store. They may not have the quality of whiskey enthusiast running their liquor department that I would want to have picking barrels. Or they might be picking them, like this one I know was picked more on a regional level where, certain stores around the area got a quarter of the barrel or whatever. If you can find one, it's probably worth grabbing. It's probably not going to suck. That's the nice thing about Buffalo Trace. And one thing I've noticed with both Buffalo Trace and Eagle Rare picks is they tend to not deviate massively from the standard profile, so it's almost always a safe bet. If you can buy the Eagle Rare single barrel store picks, you definitely should do that because they're rare. They show up, in my opinion, from my experience, about a quarter of the time. if Buffalo Trace goes out 4, like if 4 barrels hit the city around me, then we're only going to get 1 barrel of the Eagle Rare. So, if you see one, get one. It is pretty sweet to have a single barrel 10-year-old Buffalo Trace product. Eagle Rare used to be single barrel, like that's the way that the brand was initially run out of Buffalo Trace, but then they dropped that single barrel distinction. Thankfully they kept the 10-year-old. It's pretty rad. We're pretty much seeing every distillery now start a single barrel program. Heaven Hill has single barrel picks for Larceny, for Eagle Rare. Jim Beam has them for Knob Creek. That's exclusively the one that they run. But I heard that they might start doing Baker's picks, which is exciting. Wild Turkey does Russell's Reserve. They also do Kentucky Spirit barrel picks. And pretty much every craft whiskey distillery is starting to do single barrel pick programs as well. And it's great for them to showcase kind of the best they have to offer. And I'm excited that I will be able to pick a barrel here in just a few weeks with Brian. So the Entry Proof podcast is picking our first barrel, and we'll be making that available to members of Neat Nation, specifically through Patreon. We may extend it to folks who view our live streams as well. But we're going to be picking from Starlight Distillery in Indiana, small distillery, and I've tried one of their single barrel picks. That was really great, and their small batch, it was not so great. So it's like, it helps somebody like me to see, whoa, they do have some stuff going on. Like where I didn't like their standard offering very much, they've got some really good stuff. So I'm not going to write them off. Like they may blow me away here in the future. There's a lot of promise to be had there. So all that, to me, like the amount of options, the exclusivity, the curation, and the price point all plays into the value of these single barrel store picks in my mind. Whenever I go into a liquor store, the first thing I look for is to see if they have kind of a store pick section. Like, show me what you picked. And a lot of stores will actually let you taste what they picked. They'll have an open bottle behind the counter. So in some places that's illegal. But if it's not illegal, or if it's a legal gray area in your state, don't hesitate to ask. It's worth tasting through their lineup, and you might find a total gem. Get some single barrel store picks. All right, squad. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope that was helpful for you. If you're new into bourbon, just trying to find your way, definitely recommend you check out some single barrel store picks. You probably won't find a lot of highly allocated stuff. Probably not going to find a lot of limited editions, but you'll always be able to drink good bourbon if you look for single barrel store picks. Don't forget to jump over to the channel and subscribe, and jump back on YouTube Thursday evenings at 8 o'clock where I do live streams. I pop bottles, talk about what I'm tasting, talk about the whiskey news of the week. It's always a good time for sure. And then also midweek we launch new episodes of the Entry Proof podcast at entryproofpodcast.com. It's a good way to get whiskey information where you need it. In the shower, while you're jogging, you're at the grocery store, getting your hair done, fixing the car. It's going to do it. Hope you guys stay healthy and stay safe. Remember to keep it neat.